Revenge is something we can all understand. We all want to get back on that one kid who cheated on the test by looking at ours. And the fact that revenge is driven pretty much entirely by emotions helps us to understand it. And yet, for all the anger it contains, it can often be subtle as well, used to strike or expose at the most unexpected moments. Dishonored, which is an action stealth game published, I repeat, published by Bethesda and developed by Arkane Studios, wants to portray both sides of revenge. Will it sneak up on you and surprise you, or should it be dishonorably discharged? Let's find out. Dishonored casts you as Corvo, a bodyguard for the Empress, in the fictional steampunk city of Dunwall. As you return from a voyage to see her, she's killed by a mysterious assassin, and her daughter Emily is kidnapped. This prompts Lord Regent to rise to power, accusing you of her murder. After he blatantly reveals he set you up and sends you off to execution, you're rescued by the Loyalists, a resistance group with an elaborate plan to assassinate key members of the hierarchy and find Emily in order to bring her to the throne. Before long, you're also visited by a strange man called the Outsider, who bestows you with magical powers. With all of that and a new mask, you set off with a new role as an assassin. Now, the plot is very simple for a revenge story. The villains are all generically evil, and there's a twist late in the game that anyone can see coming. Still, the story can be enjoyable if it's executed well, which unfortunately it isn't here. First off, Corvo really falls flat as a silent protagonist, which was an ill-fated choice by Arkane Studios. Since this is a revenge story, it's critical that the audience feels for the protagonist and relates to him, so that they can have motivation for hunting down the bad guy. Just imagine if your favorite revenge story, from a book, film, or whatever, had a protagonist that was mute and whose face you never saw. That's the feeling you get while playing Dishonored. There are many moments that hint towards a more complex past of Corvo that are actually quite interesting, but they go unexplored. Also, the secondary characters are all quite bland and forgettable, and they would have been a lot more interesting if Corvo interacted with them on a more personal level. It's really unfortunate because Arkane Studios have crafted a really cool world here, but they failed to tell a good story within it. Just like Bioshock and Half-Life 2, Arkane Studios wanted Corvo to be a vehicle for the player to explore the world. But in those games, you were exploring really strange worlds with radical ideologies. But Dishonored's setting feels a lot like the real world, with really simple motivations established. It really feels like it was made for a more personal, character-driven journey, which this game fails to provide. There are tons of audio logs and letters scattered around, but I was uninterested in those. I wanted to know more about the characters. There's also some pacing issues, and some of the dialogue can be really flat. So, all in all, it's a disappointing tale. To be fair, there are some standout moments, and the story does pick up towards the end, but it's not enough to redeem the package. Dishonored's story could have been so much more. Dishonored claims that you can combat your way through the game, but much like Deus Ex, Thief, and Hitman, the game's much more rewarding if you're using stealth. Each level gives you a target to kill, and you're pretty much free to do that however you want. All the basics are here, like non-lethal and lethal kills, enemies' fields of visions, dragging bodies, everything you'd expect from a stealth game. The AI is smart without being unfair, the controls are great, and the alert symbols above guards' heads work really well. If you do get spotted and have to fight, the combat system is not bad either. It's a pretty simple affair where you have to block and strike at the right time, but it's really fast-paced. And enemies can attack you from anywhere, which means you have to be on your toes. The game's main twist, though, comes in Corvo's magic, which allows him to do things such as summoning a swarm of rats, seeing through walls, shooting strong gusts of wind. The most useful of these, though, is Blink, which allows you to warp short distances. This adds a whole new level of strategy to stealth, and makes traversing the levels really fun. Also, all of these magic abilities aren't really overpowered, since the game is built with them in mind. There are a lot of powerful enemies and traps around the level that'll force you to think outside the box and use these powers in order to succeed. And the powers can be upgraded using runes found around the level, which gives you incentive to actually explore the levels and partake in side quests. I honestly don't have too many gripes with Dishonored's gameplay. The pistol is a bit overpowered, true, and the landing indicator for Blink can be a bit finicky sometimes, but those are really just nitpicks. Altogether, Dishonored is a really well put together stealth game that was constructed thoughtfully. Checkpoints are fair, there are countless ways to assassinate your targets, and the stealth just feels slick. This is the new benchmark for stealth gameplay, one that Hitman Absolution is going to have to live up to. Dishonored really is as long as you want it to be. If you skip the side missions and just kind of rush through the game, then those 4-hour playthroughs you heard about aren't too far from reality. But if you take your time, really explore the world, and approach everything strategically, you can easily triple that playtime. If you want to do one of those playthroughs where you don't kill anybody, it's going to take a really long time. But Dishonored's missions are highly replayable in general. This is a game you're going to want to replay several times in the future, simply to see how different it's all going to be next time around. At first glance, Dishonored's graphics will have you wondering what exactly it's doing with that 5 gigabytes of data it insists on dumping onto your console's hard drive. Textures are rough, they're kind of murky, there's pop-in, and the facial animations aren't so hot. A lot of that is forgiven though because of the game's art style, which makes up for quite a bit. Much like in Brink and Bioshock, you kind of get the sense that this was done to hide the Unreal Engine 3's limitations, but it's still an effective technique. The lighting and shadows are very well done, but the animations are simplistic and they often transition quite poorly. Overall, the game looks pleasant enough, but don't expect to be floored in terms of visuals. Sound is very important in a stealth game, and Dishonored actually uses it to enhance its gameplay. Whenever you're close to being spotted, the music will rise up to an unnerving shriek, only toning down when the enemy has forgotten about you. It's easily the most effective method of raising tension I've seen in quite a while. A similar effect is actually done whenever a swarm of rats attacks you. Trust me, you'll hate rats by the time you're done with this game. The rest of the sound design is also just as great, with sword slashes and far-off voices being very convincing. It's a shame that the soundtrack isn't a little more memorable, but it's still very serviceable. The voice acting, meanwhile, is decent overall, though Piero's voice just felt incredibly awkward to me. I know that actor Brad Dourif was trying to make him relaxed and eccentric, but he just sounded kind of creepy to me. At the end of the day, Dishonored succeeds in pretty much every respect. As a stealth game, it's balanced, open-ended, and just really well put together. Its sound design is some of the best in gaming, and even the visuals, while not too impressive, are stylish enough to entertain. But as a story, however, Dishonored falls a bit flat. The setting is rich, but so much more could have been done with the characters, including Corvo himself. And had they fine-tuned the story and put a bit more time into it, it could have been a lot more engaging. So, instead of being a timeless masterpiece, Dishonored is merely an amazing game. Is that disappointing? Slightly. But is it still more than enough to be worth your time? Definitely. Dishonored marks the glorious return of the stealth genre, and its namesake is not at all indicative of its quality. If you like stealth games, get this one. Michael Urban out.